Marcus Chen pressed his nose against the cool, transparent steel window of their family's quarters on Kepler Station, watching the morning shift change in the alien district below. At 12 years old, he had memorized the patterns. The Zilari workers always walked in groups of 3. The Thaconian merchants moved in straight lines, never deviating from their routes. But his favorite was watching Zrix as she made her way to work each day. Zrix was different from the other Zilari. While most of her species were tall and graceful with their 4 arms and shimmering blue skin, Zrix was smaller, quieter. She walked alone, carrying her cleaning supplies in a worn satchel that she had repaired. So many times the original material was barely visible beneath the patches. Marcus had counted 37 different repair jobs on that bag over the past 6 months since his family arrived at the station. Marcus? Breakfast, his mother called from the kitchen unit. 5 more minutes, he replied, not moving from the window. Today felt different. Zrix was late by exactly 4 minutes and 12 seconds. She was never late. His father, Dr. James Chun, joined him at the window with a cup of coffee. Still watching your friend? She's not my friend, Marcus said matter-of-factly. We've never spoken. But she's consistent, predictable. I like that. He paused, pressing his finger against the glass. She's late today. Dr. Chen studied his son's serious expression. Marcus had been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder when he was 7, and while some people saw it as a limitation, James had learned to appreciate his son's unique way of viewing the world. Marcus noticed things others missed, found patterns where others saw chaos. Maybe she's sick, Dr. Chun suggested. Zilari don't get sick the same way humans do. Their immune systems are more robust. The medical reports I read said, "There she is." Dr. Chun interrupted gently. Marcus immediately focused on the figure emerging from the residential block. But something was wrong. Very wrong. Strix wasn't alone. 2 Zilari in official enforcement uniforms flanked her, their larger frames dwarfing her small stature. Her 4 arms were bound behind her back with energy restraints that glowed an ominous orange. "Dad," Marcus said, his voice tight with concern. "They're arresting her?" Dr. Chin leaned closer to the window. As the chief medical officer for the human contingent on Kepler Station, he was familiar with various alien law enforcement procedures, but this looked unusual. "Are you sure?" Marcus was already moving away from the window, grabbing his data pad from the charging station. His fingers flew across the holographic interface as he pulled up the station's legal databases. Cross-referencing Zilari enforcement protocols with detention procedures. Zilari enforcement only use orange-level restraints for 3 categories of crime, Marcus recited as he read. Class A violent offenses, espionage, or crimes against the hierarchy. Zrix cleans floors. She wouldn't commit espionage. And she's never violent. I've observed her for 183 days. She always steps aside when others approach, even when she has right-of-way. Dr. Chun watched his son's analytical mind work through the problem. Maybe there's been a mistake. There has been a mistake, Marcus said with absolute certainty. And I need to fix it. Before his father could respond, Marcus was heading for the door. Dr. Chun hurried after him, catching his son's arm gently. Marcus, wait. We don't interfere in alien legal matters. The treaties are very clear about that. Marcus stopped and looked up at his father with the intense focus that meant he was processing something important. The Human-Alien Cooperation Accords state that humans cannot interfere in internal alien legal proceedings, unless there is reasonable suspicion of injustice or if a human citizen requests intervention on behalf of an alien resident. Section 12, subsection 7. How do you even know that? I read the entire treaty database when we moved here. It was interesting. Marcus pulled up the relevant section on his datapad, highlighting the text. I can request intervention. And I have reasonable suspicion of injustice. Dr. Chun realized his son was absolutely serious. Marcus, you're 12 years old. They're not going to listen to a human child about Zilari law. They have to listen. The treaty says so. Marcus's voice carried that particular tone he used when facts were non-negotiable. Besides, humans have different perspectives on justice than most species. That's why the Accords exist. The galactic community recognized that human moral frameworks sometimes identify problems that other species miss. As they talked, they could see Zrix being led through the main plaza toward the alien enforcement district. Even from their height, Marcus could see that she wasn't resisting, but she also wasn't walking with the resigned acceptance typical of Zalari who had actually committed crimes. Her body language suggested confusion and fear. She doesn't know why she's being arrested, Marcus observed. Look at her secondary arm positioning. When Zalari are guilty of something, they hold their lower arms close to their torso in a protective gesture. Zrix's arms are extended slightly. That's the posture for confusion and seeking information. Dr. Chun marveled at his son's observational skills. You've really studied their body language? I study everything. Patterns are important. Marcus was already pulling up more files on his datapad. I need to go to the enforcement district and file a formal inquiry under the intervention clause. Marcus, Dad, she helped me once. Marcus's voice softened slightly. 2 months ago, when I got lost in the alien district because I was following an interesting pattern in the quarter designs, Strix found me. I was having a meltdown because everything was too loud and I couldn't find my way back. She didn't speak standard very well, but she sat with me until I calmed down and then walked me all the way home. She was 2 hours late for her work shift because of me. Dr. Chun felt something shift in his chest. His son rarely talked about emotional connections with others, but this clearly mattered to him. She never asked for anything in return, Marcus continued. She just helped because it was right. Now she needs help, and it's right for me to try? Looking down at his son's determined expression, Dr. Chen made a decision that would change everything for their small human family on the frontier station. All right, but we do this properly. I'm coming with you. 20 minutes later, father and son stood in the lobby of the Zalari Enforcement District, a sleek building designed around Zalari. Architectural preferences for curved walls and ambient lighting that shifted through different spectrums. Marcus clutched his datapad, which now contained a formally structured legal brief citing 17 different sections of the human-alien cooperation accords. The Zalari receptionist looked confused when Dr. Chun approached her curved desk. Her translator device crackled slightly as she spoke. Humans do not typically visit enforcement facilities. Are you lost? We're here to file a formal intervention inquiry under the cooperation accords. Dr. Chun said calmly. The receptionist's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of surprise in Zalari body language. An intervention inquiry? Regarding what matter? Marcus stepped forward. Regarding the arrest of Zrix, identification number ZX7749 Delta, who was detained approximately 23 minutes ago. I will need to consult with my supervisor. The receptionist activated a communication device, speaking rapidly in the musical Zalari language. While they waited, Marcus observed everything around them. The enforcement facility was designed to be calming for Zalari, with soft curves and flowing lines, but he noticed subtle details that others might miss. The holding area was visible through a transparent wall, and he could see Zrix sitting alone in a detention cell. She looked smaller than usual, her vibrant blue skin slightly pale with stress. A tall Zalari in an elaborate uniform approached them. Marcus immediately recognized him from the station directory as Enforcement Director Vec, one of the highest-ranking Zalari officials on Kepler Station. I am Director Vec, the Zalari said, his translator rendering his words in formal standard. I understand there is some confusion about an intervention inquiry. No confusion, Marcus said before his father could speak. I am formally requesting intervention under Section 12, Subsection 7 of the Human-Alien Cooperation Accords. I have reasonable suspicion that Zrix has been unjustly arrested. Director Vec's eye stalks shifted to focus on Marcus more carefully. You are very young for such formal proceedings. The Accords don't specify an age requirement for human citizens making intervention requests, Marcus replied. I've checked. And what makes you believe this arrest is unjust? Marcus activated his datapad, displaying the first of several prepared screens. Zrix was arrested using orange-level restraints, which according to Zalari law are reserved for Class A violent offenses, espionage, or crimes against the hierarchy. However, my observations of Zrix over the past 183 days indicate she is incapable of violent behavior and has no access to sensitive information. That would constitute espionage. Director. Vex's posture stiffened slightly. Your observations? I maintain detailed behavioral records, Marcus said matter-of-factly. Zrix exhibits consistent patterns of submissive, non-confrontational behavior. She actively avoids conflict situations and has never demonstrated aggressive tendencies. Additionally, as a Level 3 maintenance worker, she has no security clearance that would provide access to Class E. Marcus spent the rest of the day in their family quarters, surrounded by datapads, holographic displays, and printed documents that he had requested from various station databases. His father watched him work with a mixture of pride and concern as Marcus methodically built what he called his evidence matrix. I need more information about Merchant Lord Crexthal's financial situation, Marcus announced, looking up from a particularly dense financial report. The bankruptcy filing was just the beginning. There's a pattern here, but I need more data points. Dr. Chun sat down across from his son at their dining table, which had been converted into an impromptu research center. Marcus, maybe we should contact the human embassy and let the adult diplomats handle this. Adults think too slowly, Marcus said, not looking up from his work. They'll spend weeks going through proper channels while Zrix sits in a cell. Besides, I'm seeing things they would miss. Like what? Marcus activated a holographic display showing a complex timeline. Merchant Lord Crexthal's financial problems started exactly 9 months ago, when his shipping contracts in the Rigel system were cancelled. But look at this, he highlighted several dates on the timeline. He's reported 3 different theft incidents over the past 8 months. Each time, valuable cultural artifacts were allegedly stolen by servants. Dr. Chun leaned closer to study the display. You think this is a pattern? It's definitely a pattern. Each theft report was filed exactly 2 weeks before major debt payments were due. Each time, the stolen items were exactly the right value to cover the outstanding debts through insurance claims. And each time, the accused servant was hired help, not family. Marcus pulled up another screen showing personnel records. The first theft was blamed on a Thaconian cleaning specialist, who had worked for the family for 3 years with no complaints. The second was blamed on a human maintenance worker who had excellent references. Both were convicted based solely on the family's testimony, and are currently serving sentences in alien detention facilities. The implications made Dr. Chun feel sick. You're saying innocent people are in prison because of this fraud scheme? Not just any people, Marcus said, his voice taking on that particular intensity that meant he was deeply upset about something. They're all targeting servants who aren't Zalari family members. It's systematic discrimination disguised as law enforcement. Marcus stood up and began pacing, a behavior his father recognized as his son's way of processing complex emotional information. The worst part is that it works because the Zalari justice system automatically trusts family testimony over hired help. They're exploiting their own cultural biases to commit crimes. What do you want to do about it? Marcus stopped pacing and looked at his father with determination. I want to prove Zrix is innocent. But more than that, I want to prove that Merchant Lord Crexthal and his family are the real criminals. Dr. Chun realized his son had moved beyond wanting to help one alien maid. Marcus had identified a systematic injustice, and his moral compass wouldn't let him ignore it. How do we prove something like that? We need evidence that the artifacts were never actually stolen, Marcus said, returning to his data displays. If I can prove the items are still in the Crexthal household, the whole fraud scheme falls apart. How do we get access to their private residence? Marcus smiled for the first time all day, and Dr. Chun recognized the expression of someone who had solved a difficult puzzle. We don't break in. We get invited. 20 minutes later, they were standing outside the human embassy offices in the diplomatic district of Kepler Station. Marcus had requested an emergency meeting with Ambassador Sarah Martinez, citing urgent humanitarian concerns under the cooperation accords. Ambassador Martinez was a seasoned diplomat who had spent 15 years managing human relations with various alien species. She listened carefully as Marcus presented his analysis of the Krexthal fraud scheme, occasionally asking questions that tested his conclusions. "This is a very serious accusation," Ambassador Martinez said when Marcus finished his presentation. "You're alleging that a prominent Zelari merchant family is committing insurance fraud and falsely imprisoning innocent servants?" "I'm alleging that based on documented evidence," Marcus corrected. "The pattern is clear when you analyze the data objectively." Ambassador Martinez studied the 12-year-old boy sitting across from her desk. She had heard about Dr. Chun's son from other embassy staff, but this was her first time meeting Marcus in person. His analytical presentation had been more thorough than many adult intelligence briefings she had received. "Let's assume you're correct about the fraud," she said. "How do you propose to prove it?" Marcus activated his datapad and projected a new display. Cultural artifact authentication requires detailed scans that create unique identification signatures. If the Krexthal family reported specific artifacts as stolen, those signatures should be on file with the insurance companies. And if I can scan the artifacts that are supposedly missing and match them to the insurance files, we can prove they were never actually stolen. Ambassador Martinez frowned. That would require access to the family's private residence. They're not going to voluntarily let us search their home. Not search, Marcus said. Visit, as part of a cultural exchange program. Dr. Chun looked at his son with surprise. What cultural exchange program? Marcus's smile returned. The one we're going to create. The Human-Alien Cooperation Accords encourage cultural exchange activities between human families and alien households. Merchant Lord Krexthal needs to rehabilitate his public image after the bankruptcy filing. Hosting a prominent human medical officer and his family for a cultural exchange visit would be excellent publicity. Ambassador Martinez leaned back in her chair, impressed despite herself. You want to use their own desire for positive publicity against them. Exactly. And while we're there as honored guests, I can use my portable scanner to identify the allegedly stolen artifacts. Marcus, Dr. Chun said carefully. Scanning someone's belongings without permission could be considered espionage. Only if we're gathering classified information, Marcus replied. Cultural artifacts aren't classified. And we're not stealing anything, we're just verifying that stolen property has been returned to its rightful owners. Ambassador Martinez looked at the father and son, then at the evidence Marcus had compiled. In her years of diplomatic service, she had seen many injustices that couldn't be addressed through official channels. Sometimes unconventional approaches were necessary. I'll make the cultural exchange proposal, she said finally. But you understand this is extremely risky. If you're wrong, or if you're caught scanning their belongings, it could create a major diplomatic incident. I'm not wrong, Marcus said with quiet confidence. And I won't get caught? I'm very good at noticing things that other people miss. That works both ways. I can avoid being noticed when necessary. 3 hours later, Ambassador Martinez called them back to report that Merchant Lord Krexthal had enthusiastically accepted the cultural exchange proposal. The visit was scheduled for the following afternoon. Giving Marcus less than 24 hours to prepare, that evening, Marcus sat on his bedroom floor surrounded by technical manuals for the portable artifact scanner he had borrowed from the station's archaeological research department. The device was designed to identify and catalog alien cultural objects without damage, but it required precise calibration for different material compositions. Dr. Chun found him there at nearly midnight, still reading. You should get some sleep. I need to understand exactly how this scanner works, Marcus said without looking up. If I make a mistake tomorrow, Srick stays in prison and the real criminals continue exploiting innocent people. Dr. Chun sat down beside his son. Marcus, I'm proud of what you're trying to do. But I'm also worried about the pressure you're putting on yourself. Marcus finally looked up from the manual. Dad, do you remember when I was little and I used to have meltdowns when things weren't fair? Of course. You told me that my brain works differently and that sometimes that means I see problems other people miss. You said that was a gift, but only if I used it to help people. Dr. Chin felt his throat tighten with emotion. I remember. This is me using my gift to help people. Strix helped me when I needed it, even though it cost her something. Those other servants in prison, they're suffering because nobody noticed the pattern or nobody cared enough to investigate. I can notice patterns, and I care enough to investigate. Dr. Chen pulled his son into a hug. Then we'll make sure you're ready. The next afternoon, the Shin family arrived at the Krexthal residence in the prestigious merchant district of Kepler Station. The dwelling was impressive. Designed according to traditional Zalari architecture with flowing curves and expensive materials that demonstrated the family's wealth. Merchant, Lord Krexthal greeted them personally. A tall Zalari with elaborate ceremonial markings that indicated his high social status. His English was flawless, spoken through an expensive translator that rendered his words without the crackling distortion of cheaper devices. Welcome to our home, Krexthal said, extending all four arms in the traditional Zalari gesture of hospitality. It is an honor to host such distinguished human guests. Marcus observed everything as they were led through the... Marcus arrived at the Zalari courthouse with his father, Ambassador Martinez, and a data case containing what he hoped would be enough evidence to save Zrix and expose the conspiracy. The building was designed in the traditional Zalari style, with curved walls and soft lighting that was supposed to promote calm deliberation. Today, it felt more like a trap. The courtroom was already filled with official observers, including several high-ranking Zalari administrators and what Marcus recognized as members of Merchant Lord Krexthal's extended family. Zrix sat in the defendant's area, looking small and frightened in her formal restraints. Judge Vorthak, an elderly Zalari with the intricate facial markings of a senior judicial official, called the proceedings to order. His translator rendered his words informal, ceremonial tones that emphasized the gravity of the situation. We are here to determine the guilt or innocence of Zrix, identification number ZX7749 Delta, in the matter of theft of cultural artifacts from the household of Merchant Lord Krexthal. Director Vec rose to present the prosecution's case, outlining the charges and the family's testimony. Marcus listened carefully, noting that the evidence was entirely circumstantial. No stolen goods recovered. No witnesses to the actual theft, nothing but the accusation itself. The defendant had access to the household where the artifacts were stored, Director Vec concluded. She had opportunity and as hired help facing possible termination due to the family's financial difficulties. She had motive. Judge Vorthak turned to the defense area where a court-appointed Zalari advocate sat with a thin file of documents. Does the defense wish to present a case? The advocate rose briefly. Your Honor, my client maintains her innocence, but she has no evidence to refute the family's testimony. Marcus felt his stomach clench with anger. Zrix's own advocate wasn't even fighting for her. This was exactly the kind of systematic failure he had identified in his research. Judge Vorthak was about to proceed to deliberation when Ambassador Martinez rose from the observer section. Your Honor, the Human Embassy requests permission to present evidence under the intervention clause of the Human-Alien Cooperation Accords. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Judge Vorthak looked confused. The intervention clause? This is most unusual. But entirely legal under the treaties, Ambassador Martinez said firmly. A human citizen has discovered evidence relevant to this case and requests the opportunity to present it. Judge Vorthak consulted with his legal advisors while Merchant Lord Krexthal and his family whispered urgently among themselves. Marcus could see Grixtyle leaning forward to speak with Krexthal, his body language suggesting alarm. The court will hear this evidence, Judge Vorthak announced finally. However, the intervention testimony will be limited to factual presentations only. Marcus stood up, carrying his data case. At 12 years old, he was probably the youngest being ever to address a Zalari court under formal treaty provisions. But as he walked to the evidence presentation area, he felt the weight of not just Zrix's freedom, but of justice itself resting on his shoulders. "Your Honor," Marcus began, his voice clear and steady, "my name is Marcus Chun. I am a human citizen residing on Kepler Station, and I have discovered evidence that proves Zrix is innocent of the charges against her." He activated the courtroom's holographic display system and began presenting his analysis. Over the past 8 months, 3 servants of the Krexthal household have been accused of stealing cultural artifacts. In each case, the accused was hired help rather than family, and in each case, the theft was reported exactly 2 weeks before major debt payments were due. Marcus displayed his timeline analysis, showing the correlation between theft reports and financial obligations. Judge Vorthak leaned forward with interest while Merchant Lord Krexthal's family appeared increasingly agitated. "This pattern suggests systematic insurance fraud," Marcus continued. "But pattern analysis alone isn't proof. So I obtained molecular signatures of the supposedly stolen artifacts." Director Vec jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, how could this human child possibly have access to stolen artifacts?" "Because they're not stolen," Marcus said calmly. He activated a new display showing detailed molecular scans. "These signatures were recorded yesterday during a cultural exchange visit to the Krexthal residence. Every single artifact reported as stolen to the insurance companies is still in the family's possession." The courtroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Judge Vorthak banged his gavel for order while Merchant Lord Krexthal rose angrily from his seat. "This is an outrage," Krexthal shouted. "This human child invaded our privacy and conducted illegal surveillance." "No," Marcus said, his voice cutting through the chaos. "I was an invited guest participating in a cultural exchange approved by both human and Zalari authorities. The molecular signatures I recorded are of artifacts that were displayed openly in your home's public areas." Judge Vorthak studied the evidence with growing amazement. "These molecular signatures match the insurance database entries exactly." "Because they're the same objects," Marcus explained. "The artifacts were never stolen. The Krexthal family has been filing false insurance claims and blaming innocent servants to collect money needed to pay their debts." Grixtal suddenly stood up in the family section. "Your Honor, this human's accusations are preposterous. I personally supervise the household security, and I can attest that artifacts were indeed missing." Marcus turned to face Grixtal directly. "Then explain why the missing artifacts are still in your house." "Those must be replicas or similar pieces," Grixtal said quickly. "The stolen originals haven't been recovered." Marcus smiled, and Judge Vorthak noticed that it was not a pleasant expression on the young human's face. "That's interesting," Marcus said. "Because molecular signatures don't lie. These scans show atomic-level composition, including trace elements and aging patterns that are unique to each specific artifact. You can't replicate those characteristics." He activated another display showing detailed scientific analysis. "These aren't similar pieces. These are the exact same artifacts described in the insurance claims, which means either the artifacts were never stolen, or they've been magically returned without anyone noticing." Grixtal's forearms moved in the Zalari gesture for extreme agitation. "I don't understand these human scanning techniques." "Perhaps there are errors." "There are no errors," Marcus interrupted. "But there is fraud. And there's systematic abuse of innocent servants who trusted your family to treat them fairly." Judge Vorthak looked at the evidence with the expression of someone witnessing a fundamental challenge to everything. They thought they understood. If these artifacts were never stolen, then the accusations against Zrix and the previous servants are ... "False," Marcus said firmly. "All of them. Which means there are 2 innocent people currently in prison because your justice system believed the testimony of criminals over the innocence of hired help." Merchant Lord Krexthal stood again, his ceremonial markings seeming to pulse with anger. "Judge Vorthak, I demand that this human child be removed from these proceedings. His accusations are an insult to our family's honor." "Your family's honor?" Marcus turned to face the merchant lord directly. You've been destroying innocent lives to solve your financial problems. What honor is there in that? How dare you? How dare you? Marcus's voice rose for the first time, carrying all the moral outrage he had been containing. Zrix helped me when I was lost and scared. She was kind to me when she didn't have to be, even though it made her late for work. And you tried to destroy her life because you needed money and thought nobody would care about what happened to hired help. The courtroom had fallen completely silent. Every being present was watching this human child confront powerful aliens with nothing but truth and moral conviction. But that's what humans do, Marcus continued, his voice becoming calmer but more intense. We care about individuals. We notice when people are being treated unfairly, and we don't accept systematic injustice just because it's traditional or convenient. Judge Vorthak looked at the evidence, then at Zrix, then at the Krextel family. Grixtel, as head steward, you had access to all areas of the household. You also had detailed knowledge of the family's financial situation and debt obligations. Grixtel's posture became defensive. I have served this family loyally for 20 years. Loyal enough to help them commit insurance fraud? Marcus asked. Loyal enough to send innocent people to prison? Aye. That is not... Grixtel's translator struggled with his increasingly frantic words. Marcus activated one final display. Your Honor, I present transaction records showing payments from Krextel family accounts to Grixtel's personal accounts, occurring within days of each theft report. These payments are listed as security bonuses, but they correspond exactly to 20% of each insurance payout. The evidence was devastating. Grixtel had been receiving payment for his participation in the fraud scheme. Taking a cut of the money obtained by falsely accusing innocent servants, Judge Vorthak rose slowly, his aged features showing the weight of the revelations. This court finds that the evidence presented by human citizen Marcus Chun raises serious questions about the validity of all charges against Rooks and the previous defendants in similar cases. He turned to Merchant Lord Krextel. Penned.